Thanks, Don. Good morning, everyone. With me today is Deputy Chief David Baker. Chief Baker was acting Chief of Police at the time of this incident. I was out of town and out of the Midwest. I'm going to give a detailed timeline of what we have so far on the officer-involved shooting of Mr. Elrod. Following the timeline, I will also be available for questions. On Monday, February 23rd, just before 6:30 p.m., Danny Elrod walked into the Family Dollar store located at 1725 South 13th Street. Elrod selected a pack of Slim Jim snack sticks and walked up to the cash register aisle to make a payment. When the cashier opened the cash drawer to complete the transaction, Elrod told the cashier he was going to take the money. Elrod reached across the counter and began taking money out of the register while the cashier began to struggle with Elrod in an attempt to stop him. After a brief struggle with Elrod, the cashier stopped struggling and let Elrod take the money. During the struggle, the cash register was jarred loose from its stand. There were two customers waiting in line behind Elrod while the robbery occurred. One of the customers called 911 to report the robbery. This is what initiated the police response. The robbery was captured on store security cameras, and I've authorized the release of two still photos from the robbery. One photo shows Elrod entering into the store. The second photo depicts Elrod reaching over the counter and into the cash register. Do we have these still photos in these? What's... At 6:31 p.m., Omaha police officers were dispatched to the robbery at the Family Dollar. The first two officers were close by and arrived on scene at 6:32, 1 minute later. Officers Alvin Lugod and Bradley Bornoff were working in a two-officer vehicle. Upon arrival, three witnesses were standing in the parking lot of Family Dollar, pointing the officers in the direction of Mr. Elrod, who was walking northbound on 13th Street. I'm now going to provide you with the details from the contact Omaha police officers had with Elrod. To put this in perspective, the initial contact with Elrod until Officer Lugod fired his service weapon was 1 minute and 38 seconds. So they had contact with Mr. Elrod for 1 minute and 38 seconds. Officers Lugod and Bornhoff made contact with Elrod in the parking lot of Sports Car Garage, located at 1461 South 13th Street. They turned on their emergency lights on the cruiser and exited. Their service handguns were drawn, and they both gave Elrod loud verbal commands. The commands included, but were not limited to, repeatedly saying, "Show me your hands and get on the ground." Officer Lugod did warn Elrod, "You're going to get shot." Elrod did not comply with the commands as he walked away from the officers to the front of two vehicles that were parked up against a chain-link fence in the parking lot on the east side of 13th Street. Elrod responded to the officers by saying, shoot me," and for what? For what? As he was being ordered to get on the ground. The officer's cruiser was equipped with a video camera. The camera recorded audio and video footage of their contact with Mr. Elrod. I've authorized the release of a still photo of Elrod as he walked in front of the cruiser. At 6:33 p.m., Officers Patricia Pope and Nicole Geiza arrived at the Sports Car Garage. Officers Pope and Geiza's cruiser also was equipped with a video camera and captured video from another angle. So we had two angles of view fundamental to our investigation. These two officers also gave loud verbal commands to Elrod, which included, "Put your hands in the air." Elrod continued to make his way northbound along the front of the two parked cars to the front of a sedan. Lugod was standing at the rear bumper of the sedan and continued to give verbal commands to Elrod. Lugod can be heard on the recording saying, "Don't make me do this. Don't make me do this. You're going to get shot. Come on, come on." Officer Lugod was the primary communicator with Elrod, and Elrod focused on Lugod for much of the interaction. The officers all said in their interviews that Elrod shouted to the officers that he had a gun as he held one hand at his waistband and reached into his waistband with the other hand at least 3 times. At this point, Elrod climbed onto the front hood of the sedan and stood above the officers. It's depicted in the lower still photo. While on the hood of the sedan, Elrod held onto the top of the fence with his left hand while he placed his right hand on his waistband. The top of the chain link fence was lined with 6 strands of barbed wire. I've also, disregard, the photo also depicts the locations of officers Bornhoff and Pope, which would be right here. At one point, while Elrod stood on the hood of the sedan, he turned toward Lugod and appeared to reach his left hand into his waistband in a downward motion. Lugod asked for a taser at this point. Officer Geiser holstered her handgun and pulled out her taser as she moved to the rear of the sedan where Lugod was standing. Elrod can be heard on the audio recording yelling, "Shoot me, shoot me." Within 3 seconds, Geiser fired her taser at Elrod. At least one taser probe hit Elrod in the left thigh. However, the taser was ineffective and failed to connect for an electrical charge. After Elrod was tasered, the officers described him as becoming more agitated. Elrod reached down with both hands and pulled the taser wires from his body. At 6:34 p.m., just 13 seconds after the taser was fired, Elrod turned his back on Lugod and in the direction of Bornhoff and Pope. This is Bornhoff right here. This would be Pope. He reached both hands to the top of the fence, and it appeared that he attempted to leap over the fence. Simultaneously, Officer Lugod fired 3 shots while Elrod was in midair. Elrod was immediately incapacitated by the gunshots and fell to the hood of the sedan. The officers moved in on Elrod, secured him in handcuffs, and pulled him to an open area away from the sedan. One of the officers announced on the radio that shots were fired. The officers also began administering first aid. Elrod was transported from the scene by Omaha Fire Rescue. No weapons were found on Elrod's person or at the scene. Elrod did have cash in his pants pockets that was taken from the Family Dollar store during the robbery. To summarize Officer Lugod's statement, he saw Elrod turn away from him in the direction of Officer Bornhoff's position and reach up to the fence with both hands. Officer Lugod perceived Elrod's actions as a threat to Officer Bornhoff. Officer Lugod feared that Elrod was going to jump to the ground, pull a gun, and shoot Officer Bornhoff. The officer involved investigation squad is investigating this incident. My senior command staff and I have all viewed the available footage and evidence in this case. Officer Lugod made a split-second decision when he shot his service weapon at Elrod. The question is, at the moment in time that Lugod discharged his service weapon at Elrod, was he an imminent threat? This is the question that needs to be analyzed and determined by the grand jury and through the internal affairs investigation as I determine his personnel status. I can say it does not appear to be criminal from my vantage point, as Lugod spent 1 minute and 38 seconds with Elrod, while Elrod repeatedly went into his waistband in a threatening manner, along with his statements he had a gun and shoot me. Lugod did not fire his weapon in response to these threats. This investigation has not been completed. An autopsy has been completed, but we are awaiting the official reports and toxicology results, which could take several weeks. The initial autopsy results shows that Elrod received 2 gunshot wounds to his back and 1 gunshot wound to his right shoulder. There were 2 bullets recovered from Elrod's body during the autopsy. 1 bullet was fragments from Officer Lugod's gunshots. However, the other bullet was from a previous gunshot injury. This bullet was encased in fibrous tissues. The doctor reported to our detectives that the bullet has been present in Elrod's body for some time in order for the fibrous tissues to form. Furthermore, detectives have also learned through interviews with Elrod's relatives that he was shot approximately 10 years ago in Youngstown, Ohio, and we don't have any further information on this. Detectives made contact with Mr. Elrod's wife, Amanda Elrod, on Monday evening. Amanda arrived at the scene of the shooting shortly after the incident occurred and made contact with a uniformed patrol officer. Furthermore, Amanda was contacted in person by detectives. Her demeanor during this contact can be characterized as uncooperative, and she refused to be interviewed by the detectives. It is also important to note in this investigation that on Sunday, February 22nd, at approximately 6:30 p.m., officers were called to 30th and Dodge Street, where they had contact with Mr. Elrod. He was arrested on a warrant from Sarpy County and transported to their jail. The detectives are reviewing additional cruiser video to determine the mental status of Elrod just 24 hours prior to the shooting. Elrod was released from Sarpy County Jail on Monday, February 23rd at 2:35 p.m., just 4 hours before this incident. Furthermore, Danny Elrod does have an extensive criminal history which includes several felony and misdemeanor convictions. Those listings are in the press packet prepared for the media today. I've asked the FBI to assist in this investigation, as our cruiser video evidence will be analyzed by the FBI in an effort to get the clearest possible audio from the recordings. All the interviews with officers have been completed. However, at this point, there have not been any witnesses that have come forward that may have witnessed the actual shooting. We know that there were other witnesses inside of the Family Dollar store when Elrod committed the robbery. We would like to talk to those witnesses as well. So anyone who may have witnessed the robbery or the officer-involved shooting is encouraged to call the Omaha Police Department Homicide Unit, 444-5656. The officer who discharged his weapon is 31-year-old Alvin Lugod, a 6-year veteran assigned to the C-Shift Southeast Precinct Uniform Patrol Bureau. Per Omaha Police Department policy, any officer who discharges his or her firearm that results in injury or death is placed on paid administrative leave pending homicide and internal affairs investigations. Omaha Police Officer Alvin Lugod has been placed on paid administrative leave, and I have determined that he will remain on administrative leave until the completion of the grand jury proceedings and the conclusion of our internal affairs investigation into this incident. Myself and County Attorney Don Klein are available for questions at this point.
Well, let me talk a little bit about the legal process. There's a process to what we're talking about, and then we can answer some questions. And the legal issue here and the question that we need to ask, it is a question of who did this from the standpoint of who killed Danny Elrod. We know that Officer Lugod fired his weapon and killed Danny Elrod. The question that needs to be answered is to establish the circumstances that existed at the time the shooting took place. And the law tells us, the question being, did the officer reasonably believe that his use of deadly force, which is what we're talking about here when somebody uses a firearm, was immediately necessary to protect him or others against death or serious bodily injury? And the instructions on the law, I'm just reading them to you, in that regard say that the law states that the fact that a person may have been wrong in estimating the danger does not matter as long as there was a reasonable belief or basis for what he believed and he acted reasonably in response to that belief. So that frames the legal issue here with regard to the facts and circumstances that we have before us. First, finding out and ensuring what we know as far as what circumstances and facts exist, and then analyzing it with from this legal standpoint. We're awaiting this enhanced video of the incident. We have the autopsy's been completed, but obviously we don't have a report yet from the doctor. I think Lindy did the autopsy. I've asked her to expedite that report. I believe that the earliest I can get that is March 4th. And we're asking that the toxicology on that be done, sped up somewhat quicker. The witness interviews, as the chief described, that have been taken with regard to the officers are being transcribed. And we're intending to expedite this process from our perspective that by law requires this case to come before a grand jury. We currently have a grand jury coming in to sit on March 9th, and it's possible that we may be able to expedite this case to get it before that grand jury on March 9th. So, any questions?
Is there any indication, Don, that this, or Chief, that this could be a suicide by cop scenario? Too early to say, or does it appear that way?
Based on Mr. Elrod's actions, going into his waistband, making reference that he had a gun, asking the officers to shoot him, ignoring the commands, when he did not have a weapon, does play into elements of suicide by cop. But again, the question that remains, which we will vet through the grand jury and through the internal affairs process, is was at the moment in time Mr. Elrod an imminent threat when Officer Lugard discharged his firearm.
Amanda Elwood tells a different story. She said she was there, saw the whole thing. How credible are her statements?
We have reached out to Mrs. Elrod in an attempt to have her come back in and talk with us. She hasn't sat down officially with us and given us a statement.
Chief, you released some still photos from the scene. Why not release the police cruiser camera video?
Well, the cruiser camera video, Joe, is going to be part of the grand jury process. This grand jury is an investigative hearing that will determine the facts of this case. It's important that we don't release that in order to taint or not to taint the grand jury. It's evidence for the grand jury. It's always been that case.
Aren't those still pictures evidence for the grand jury as well?
It is, but do you want an opportunity to get a glimpse as to what took place? We're trying to be as transparent as possible, but realizing there's a grand jury in play as well.
Don't you think releasing the video, if it supports your statements, would alleviate any concerns in town that shooting is questionable?
Repeat that question.
If the video supports your statement as to what happened, wouldn't releasing the video possibly go a long way towards alleviating any thoughts that it wasn't justified?
I just gave a timeline of what took place based on our viewing of that particular video. I'm not sure what statement you're referencing that I make that you think the video...
If the video supports everything you've laid out, why not release the video?
Because it's evidence in the grand jury. And also, we want it enhanced, and we want the audio enhanced and the video enhanced so the grand jury can see it. That's pretty simple, Joe. It's pretty simple. That's evidence for the grand jury. Next question from a different reporter.
So is his wife on scene or not on scene?
We don't know. We don't know. She's yet to talk to us.
Did you release
The video
the,
itself, Chief, does it clearly show the shooting, or is there any doubt about what the video might show?
No, it shows the shooting. It shows it.
Chief, do you have a current address for Mr. Elrod? He seems to have provided several different addresses for on different various arrests that he has, and we can't make heads or tails as far as where he and his wife live.
I don't have it in front of me right now, Maggie, but we can try and get that to you.
As opposed to the victim trying to jump off the car and assault one of the officers, possibly with a weapon, could he have simply been trying to climb the fence and get away?
What affiliation are you with? I want everybody to know who you are, what affiliation you're with as you ask these questions. So,
Joe Jordan, Nebraska Watchman.
okay, and your question is?
As the possibility that you indicated in your statement,
Yeah.
the officer felt that the victim was trying possibly to leave the car and pull a weapon and shoot one of the officers. I'm wondering if there's another scenario, it could be that he was trying to escape and jump the fence and leave.
Joe, I'll be honest with you. I question whether or not you listened very closely to what I've said here today. It's very possible that Mr. Elrod was attempting to jump over the fence. Okay? The question is, what did Officer Lugard perceive at that point in time? That's what we're trying to determine. But it's possible he was trying to jump over the fence. Yes.
Chief, most officers never use their service weapon at all in their entire career. This officer used it twice in a 6-year period. Have there been other incidents of this officer with excessive force or any other indication that just the luck of the draw, or might have been some other issues?
I can't get into Officer Lugard's personnel background. That's just something I'm not allowed legally to get into. He was in an officer-involved shooting in 2012, which was presented to a grand jury and was cleared of any wrongdoing in that particular incident.
Alexandra Stone with KETV. You mentioned that he had been approached by cops 24 hours prior, and they were looking into his mental state. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
When they had contact with him 24 hours prior, he was making some type of statements that referenced suicidal thoughts. So we want to go back and see what we can retrieve on that front.
And can you talk to me at all? I understand that the Omaha Police have a crisis intervention team who deals with these situations involving mental illness. Should there have been follow-up, or is there anything else that could have been done in that 24-hour period to prevent him from ending up here?
As far as once he was dropped off at Sarpy County Jail? You know, I really can't comment on that because I don't know what took place once he entered into the facility there. Okay, seeing no more questions,
How long will it take for your toxicology report to come back?
Normally that takes the 2 weeks to a month, so we're hoping to get that back. We're asking to expedite that, even if it costs us more, whatever it takes, so we can get that done. And like I said, hopefully maybe put this case before the grand jury that starts on March 9th.
Do
So
you
we'll see.
announce that we will be able to find out what those reports?
Sure, once we get that back, I'll be happy to let you know. Thank you.
thanks, everybody.